hook and big promise. Have you ever wondered why so many women in their later years quietly grow resentful toward their husbands? It's not something they talk about openly, not at family dinners, not at social gatherings, and sometimes not even with close friends. But behind closed doors, many women feel a slow-burning frustration that builds over decades. And here's the shocking truth. Resentment doesn't just happen overnight. It builds in small, almost invisible ways. Words left unsaid, appreciation withheld, respect slowly fading, until one day, a woman wakes up and realizes she no longer feels the love she once had. In this video, we're going to explore the 9 biggest reasons women quietly grow resentful toward their husbands as they age. If you watch closely, you may recognize some of these signs in your own relationship or in the lives of people you know. And by the end, you'll see not just why resentment happens, but also what it teaches us about love, respect, and the human heart. So let's dive in. Reason number 1. When she feels invisible. One of the deepest wounds a woman can carry is the feeling of being unseen. In the early years of marriage, couples talk, laugh, and share dreams. But over time, many women feel like their presence is no longer noticed. Her words are brushed aside. Her needs are put at the bottom of the list. She still cooks, cleans, organizes, and shows up, but it's almost as if she's become part of the furniture. She's there, but she's not seen. Take Margaret, a 68-year-old retired teacher. For decades, she poured her energy into her marriage and her family. But once her kids grew up and left, she found herself sitting across from a husband who barely acknowledged her. She once felt like his partner, his equal, his confidant. Now she feels like a ghost in her own home. Here's the truth. A woman doesn't stop needing to be noticed just because she's older. In fact, the older she gets, the more deeply she craves connection, affirmation, and attention. And when she doesn't get it, that's when resentment begins to grow. If you've ever felt invisible in a relationship, or if you know someone who has, type number 1 in the comments. Your voice might help another woman realize she's not alone. But invisibility is just the start. Because what happens when it's not just her presence that's ignored, but her feelings? That brings us to the next reason. Reason number 2, emotional neglect. Every marriage faces stress, but emotional neglect is different. It's not about the big arguments. It's about the silence, the cold distance that creeps in when her husband stops showing interest in her thoughts, her struggles, or her joys. At first, she might excuse it. He's tired. He's stressed. But over the years, the lack of emotional support begins to feel like abandonment. She no longer shares her heart because she knows it won't be heard. Consider Eleanor, a 71-year-old woman who once dreamed of a warm and emotionally supportive marriage. But as the years went on, her husband grew colder. He didn't ask how her day was. He didn't notice when she was struggling. The absence of care hurt more than any argument ever could. And now she admits that the loneliness she feels in her marriage is far worse than being physically alone. Emotional neglect is dangerous because it tells a woman, your feelings don't matter. And once she believes that, resentment is inevitable. If emotional neglect is something you've seen or experienced, type number 2 in the comments. But as painful as neglect is, there's another wound that cuts even deeper, when trust itself begins to break. Reason 3. Broken promises. And trust is the foundation of every marriage. Without it, love struggles to survive. But here's the thing. Trust isn't only broken by big betrayals. It can also be broken by small, repeated disappointments. When a husband makes promises, I'll help around the house. I'll be more attentive. I'll be home earlier. But never follows through, his wife slowly begins to lose faith. Each broken promise is like a crack in the foundation, and over the years, those cracks spread until the whole structure feels unstable. Let me share a story about Carol, a 70-year-old woman whose husband constantly assured her that retirement would be their golden years. He promised they'd travel, try new hobbies, and enjoy life together. But once retirement came, he did none of it. Instead, he retreated into his own routines, leaving her feeling disappointed and betrayed. His broken promises left her with not just resentment, but a sense of grief for the life she thought they'd share, but never did. Here's the painful truth. When promises are broken, it's not just about the action. It's about what it represents. It tells her, "You can't rely on me." And for a woman who has given her life to a marriage, that realization is devastating. If you've ever felt let down by repeated promises that never came true, type number 3 in the comments. Now, trust is essential, but so is respect. And when respect begins to fade, the heartache only deepens. Reason number 4, lack of communication. Every strong marriage is built on communication. It's how couples solve problems, share dreams, and stay connected. But when communication breaks down, resentment has room to grow. For many women, the silence is deafening. Conversations that once flowed easily now feel forced, or worse, non-existent. Instead of long talks about life, hopes, and struggles, she's left with short, shallow exchanges. What's for dinner? Did you pay the bill? Take Susan, a 72-year-old who told me, "We used to stay up late talking about everything under the sun. Now it feels like we live in two different worlds." What hurt her most wasn't the absence of words. It was the absence of connection. Here's the truth. When communication stops, misunderstandings grow, frustrations build, and slowly, love turns into distance. For a wife, that distance often feels like rejection, and over time, it creates a deep well of resentment. If communication, or the lack of it, has played a role in your marriage, type number 4 in the comments. But communication is just one part of closeness. Because even if you talk, what happens when the warmth and intimacy begin to disappear? Reason number 5, loss of intimacy. Intimacy is about more than just physical closeness. It's about emotional and physical connection working together. But in many long-term marriages, intimacy slowly fades. At first, it's subtle. Fewer hugs, less hand-holding, a rare kiss goodnight. Then, one day, she realizes that the closeness they once shared has nearly vanished. What used to make her feel cherished now feels like a distant memory. Linda, a 69-year-old retired nurse, described it perfectly. "We became like roommates instead of husband and wife. We share the same space, but not the same closeness." For her, the loss of intimacy wasn't just about touch. It was about the absence of love expressed through warmth, affection, and connection. Here's the painful truth. When intimacy disappears, a woman begins to wonder, am I still desirable? Do I still matter? And when those doubts are met with silence, resentment fills the gap. If intimacy is something you believe every marriage must protect, type number 5 in the comments. But even deeper than intimacy is the need for respect. Because without respect, love struggles to survive at all. Reason number 6, growing apart. Instead of together, marriage is a journey. But the sad reality is that not all couples grow in the same direction. Over time, interests, values, and dreams can shift. And when partners stop sharing those dreams, they begin to drift apart. For many women, this drift feels like abandonment. She wanted to keep building a life together, but instead, it feels like they're living two separate lives under the same roof. Take Harriet, who's 74. She always dreamed of traveling after retirement, but her husband refused. He preferred to stay home. Slowly, their lives stopped overlapping. She went out with friends, he stayed in. And though they weren't fighting, the distance between them grew wider and wider. The truth is, when couples stop growing together, they inevitably grow apart. And for a wife, that gap feels like betrayal, not of a promise spoken, but of the life partnership she thought she'd always have. If you've ever seen a couple slowly drift apart, type number 6 in the comments. And here's where it gets even harder, because drifting apart often leads to something even more painful, the slow fading of respect itself. Reason number 7, feeling taken for granted in. The early years of marriage, small gestures often bring big joy. A simple thank you, a warm smile, or noticing the little things she does can make her feel deeply appreciated. But over time, many husbands stop noticing. The dinners, the laundry, the birthday planning, the emotional support, all of it begins to feel expected rather than valued. Eleanor, a 70-year-old grandmother, put it this way: "I spent decades making sure everyone else was cared for. But one day I realized no one ever stopped to ask what I needed. That realization didn't just sting, it broke her heart." Here's the hard truth. When appreciation disappears, love often follows. Because no matter how strong a woman is, feeling invisible in her own marriage will always leave scars. If you've ever felt unappreciated in a relationship, type number 7 in the comments. But even deeper than feeling unappreciated is another wound, the weight of unresolved conflicts. Reason number 8, unresolved conflicts. Piling up, every couple argues. But what separates healthy marriages from struggling ones is how those conflicts are handled. When disagreements get ignored, brushed aside, or left unresolved, they don't just vanish, they pile up. Over the years, those small wounds stack into a mountain of resentment. Gloria, now 73, shared her story. "I tried for years to tell him what bothered me, but he always said, 'You're overreacting.' Eventually, I stopped talking. But inside, the resentment never left. That silence isn't peace, it's surrender. And when a woman stops fighting for resolution, it usually means she's already lost hope that things will ever change. If you believe that unresolved issues can quietly destroy a marriage, type number 8 in the comments. And that brings us to one of the most heartbreaking truths of all, when she realizes the person beside her no longer feels like the same person she married. Reason number 9, growing into strangers. This may be the hardest realization of all, looking across the room and feeling like the man she once loved has become a stranger. It doesn't happen overnight. It's the slow erosion of shared conversations, laughter, and dreams. One day she looks at him and thinks, "Who are you, and where did my partner go?" Margaret, a retired social worker at 74, said it best: "We didn't fall out of love in one big moment. We just stopped connecting in 1,000 small ways." The tragedy is that many husbands don't even notice this shift. To them, nothing seems wrong. But for their wives, the emptiness of living with someone emotionally absent feels heavier than any argument ever could. If you've ever witnessed two people grow into strangers under the same roof, type number 9 in the comments. What all of this really means. Now, if you've stayed with me this far, you've probably realized something important. Women don't just wake up one morning and resent their husbands. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, through years of emotional labor that goes unnoticed, conversations that fade, intimacy that disappears, and dreams that no longer align. It happens in the silence of unresolved conflicts and in the painful realization that she feels more like a roommate than a wife. But here's the truth I want you to carry with you. Resentment doesn't always mean the love is gone. More often, it means the love has been buried under frustration, under exhaustion, under years of being unseen. And that love can be uncovered again if both people are willing to do the work. For some couples, that might mean starting small, saying thank you more often, holding hands again, having real conversations. For others, it may mean sitting down and facing decades of unresolved pain head-on. And for some, it may even mean choosing a new path forward, one that prioritizes peace, growth, and self-respect. No matter what it looks like, the message is the same. You deserve to feel valued. You deserve to be loved, seen, and cherished, not just in the beginning, but for a lifetime. Your turn. Let's talk now. I'd love to hear from you. Which of these reasons resonated with you the most? Have you seen this happen in your own marriage or in someone else's? And most importantly, which step do you believe couples should focus on first to bring back connection? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single each one, and your stories not only inspire me, they also remind others that they are not alone in this journey. 1. Last thing before you go, if you found this video eye-opening, please like this video to show your support. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Comment below with your number, 1 through 9, for the reason that hit you hardest. Your engagement isn't just feedback. It helps me continue making content that uplifts and empowers people just like you. Remember, love doesn't disappear because of age. It disappears when effort disappears. But with awareness, honesty, and care, it can be rebuilt. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing your time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.